This conference will now be recorded.
Like other countries would like to be in the top 5 always, and as we know, we are in the pandemic situation globally. These challenges are always creating opportunities for businesses, and today we've got participants of around registered 30 people and from across 4 continents. So maybe for some people it would be in the evening now, but it's and we're assuming that most of the people will be wearing their entrepreneurship hat. So we are looking for those challenges to make it opportunities for us. In this scenario, we found that we will talk today on how businesses should capitalize on investment and opportunities, whether it's SME level or medium large companies involved in different sectors. Don't forget to follow us on the social media. We will be also sending a questionnaire and a feedback after the event. If we can keep the question and answers at the end of the session after the speakers and wrapping up. And you can also place your questions on the chat window that we will have, and we will pick it up and we will ask these questions to the right speakers. So today we have got Rob Goddard, and he will be speaking today on how not to gain investment. And Rob is a professional businessman with more than 30 years of experience in the senior and level and financial services, including banking, insurance. And for over 18 years, Rob has been involved in the M&A industry. He has today helped more than 356 businesses owners to achieve successful exits, representing more than £2 billion in transaction value. Our second speaker today is Reg Athwal. And by the way, Rob is based in UK currently, and Reg Athwal is based in Dubai. And his title would be Unleash Your Capital DNA. Reg is a professional speaker, certified, and is a business advisor, author, and media presenter. Through his career, he has transformed more than 124 family businesses and leading direct impact to approximately $6 billion US dollars. And a world certified as I said, public speaker and founding chairman of the Public Speakers Association of the Middle East. I will leave the floor for Rob to present.
Lovely, thank you, Adel. Good afternoon and good evening to people. And I just wanted to say, whilst Reg and I have quite a bit of experience in the business world, this period of time is actually for you, the viewers. It's not about me and Reg or Adel, which is why we've dedicated most of this time for Q&A. But I've been asked to speak about investment, and I like the reverse message, which is how not to gain investment. So I want to go through, thank you. Oh, I've got a very good helper in Dubai there. I think there's really good learnings to look at the reverse of something, which is in the business context, what to avoid in order to have success. Learn from the pitfalls that others have fallen into so that one might learn and not fall into the same traps. As Adel says, I own a number of businesses. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm also a serial father. I have 6 children. I own 4 businesses in 3 countries. And I also work as a non-exec director in another 6 businesses. I also work with 2 charities as well. So I'm as busy now as I ever was when I was running just one business. I'm also a personal investor. So some of the businesses I work with as a non-exec director, I sink my own money into some of those businesses as well. So from that experience, I just want to share with you some learnings that I've made on the way. So if I can have the next slide up. So it's the 8 steps to not gaining investment? Can I have the next slide, please? Wonderful. And these will be revealed. So this one's an interesting one, and I'm very happy to be controversial because I think that will help questions in the Q&A for Reg and I. Number one is, if you don't want to get investment for your business, by all means do this thing. Don't solve a problem. You will be amazed at how many business owners I've come across, inventors, that have invented something that doesn't solve a problem. And you think, well, why have they invented something, created something that doesn't solve a problem? And as an investor, I'm thinking, what is the point? Because if it doesn't solve a problem, it's very hard to sell. So that's the first thing. If you don't want to get investment, don't solve a problem. So obviously the reverse is true. If you do want to sell something, solve a problem. So number two on how not to get investment. And this is quite often, this is very common with pre-revenue businesses. If you have invented something, one thing that I'm looking for as an investor, and I know investors generally, is proof of concept. I don't mean market research. I mean finding people with money that will buy your product or service. So if you don't want to get investment, then don't sell the thing that you've invented, because there's a very small community of people that will invest in pre-revenue. It's the hardest form of investment funding to be successful at, is if the business hasn't sold its product or service. So the reverse then is, if you do want to raise investment for your new early stage business, go out and sell your product and service. Do it yourself. Prove that what you've invented solves a problem and people are willing to part with money. Okay, so number three, and this particularly revolves around pitches, investment pitches. I have sat in and endured sometimes a lot of investment pitches. And one of the pitfalls that someone pitching for investment does is they talk excessively about their product or service. And when I mean excessively, I mean to the exclusion of everything else. Because partly it's because they're really excited about what they've created. They're really passionate and enthusiastic. But as an investor, that's not all I want to hear about. Actually, I'm less interested about the product and service than I am about other things. So when you're pitching for investment, just be mindful of how much you talk about the product or service, because the person that you're pitching to may not have the same level of interest in your newfangled widget that you've invented. Number four, if you don't want to get investments, have some really creative financial forecasts. And when I mean creative, it's the traditional hockey stick, because some of you may be familiar with this. It's where the business initially dips and then it goes up. After investment, it goes skyward. It's exponential growth after they get in investment. I don't believe that forecast. I'm sure the person pitching doesn't believe that forecast. So when you're forecasting financials, make it realistic, attractive, but make it realistic and credible. And it isn't the numbers that are important, it's the underlying narrative, the growth story. So if you don't want to get investment, have unrealistic hockey stick growth curves. Number five, if you don't want to get investment, don't put any of your cash into the transaction. I like business owners to have some skin in the game. Maybe not as much cash as I'm looking to put in, but I do like them to put in some cash, not just something called sweat equity, blood, sweat and tears. I want them to put some of their hard cash because I know they're going to be incentivized to want to grow the business with me on board as well. But if you don't want to get investment, don't use any of your cash. Number six. This is quite common in a pitch deck. I can read 30, 40, 50, sometimes 80 or 90 pages in a pitch deck, which is too long, by the way, far too long. What's missing quite often is, how as the investor, I'm going to make my money. How am I going to treble my money in the next 2 to 3 years? It's missing. It's not in there. So it's been written from the perspective of the person pitching for the investment, not written, the investment pitch, from the perspective of the investor, who's a potential investor that's looking for this. Number 7, if you don't want to get investment, and this happens quite often, I have no idea when I read some pitch decks as to, is it a minority investment? Is it a majority that they're looking for? How much equity am I being offered? And I think this is often because the person pitching for investment doesn't want to value their business, because maybe they don't want to seem silly, or that there's an unrealistic value in mind. But I, as a reader and an investor, I've got to know, am I looking at 10%? Am I looking at 30%? Am I looking at 70%? What is the magnitude? So in a pitch deck, there must be some idea, even if you don't put a percentage in, some idea of the level of investment, just to give me a feel for that. And the last one, and I've left it last, but it's probably the most important, because it's the most commonly misunderstood thing. In a pitch deck or in a pitch presentation, the person pitching forgets what the number one reason why an investor invests. And I wonder whether you know or have an idea what that number one reason is. It isn't making money. I can tell you that now, because people who invest have got money already. So it's not about that. I mean, it comes somewhere up the priority table, but it's not number one. The number one investment reason, motivation for investing, is to have fun. I want to enjoy the money, the company that I'm going to work with, go on that growth journey with, and most importantly, the owners of that business. Do I like them? Will I get on with them? Are they the sort of people I could work with? So number one motivation for investment is to have fun. So if you don't want to get investment, don't concentrate on the motivations of the investor. Just talk about your products and services infinitum. Good, thank you for that. I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to leave some controversial steps in there. Those are the 8 steps for not gaining investment. I would welcome, after Reg's piece, I'd welcome questions in the Q&A. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Adel.
Thanks, Rob. The floor is yours, Reg.
Thank you very much, Adel. Thanks, Rob, for setting the stage, as always, with great content. And it's a pleasure to be sharing the stage with Rob. It's been a while since we did that live in person in Dubai. And hopefully we're on a full screen now, because I'm not sharing any slides. So hopefully all of you got a full view. So what I decided to do is, rather than maybe sharing different models or slides, it's just really from my heart, with the short time that I have, is share with you a few things that I've learned along the way in business, dealing with various clients around the world, having a chance to increase their equity value, their revenues. My experience is different to Rob's. Rob is an expert when it comes to, I think, over 350 transactions done when it comes to exits and selling businesses. And I come from the other side, which is working with entrepreneurs and family businesses to focus on the growth and growing the business. And there are times where people want to exit. So how do we create more value for the business before Rob and his entire team get their hands on that business and take it to the next stage? So first of all, I'd like to share with you a brief story and a big lesson that I learned in my early 20s, where I started my entrepreneurial journey when I was 17 years of age. And by the time I was 21, I was literally staring at bankruptcy. And I learned some very valuable lessons as a 21-year-old. And the first one is focus on your strengths. Focus on what you're good at. Don't try to do everything on your own. And when it comes to valuing a business or even looking at an exit, and I'm sure Rob in the Q&A will go deeper in that, for me, I'm really hot on having the right people around you, building a dream team. And I see so many entrepreneurs making this mistake where, as I was building this business, it was like a fast train running on enthusiasm, had no real commercial or business experience. I was young, everybody wanted to help me. And it was great and hit that $1 million figure very quickly, only for it to come crashing down because I thought, hey, I don't need to hire more people at a management level. Someone told me, hey, you can learn these things. Why do you need to bring on board more people at a senior level? It's only going to cost you more money. Why spend the money? And I took on board that very bad advice from someone, thinking I could do it all on my own. And before I knew it, I realized I wasn't good with operations. I wasn't good with the financial aspect of the business. I was good with creating ideas. I was good with developing the product. I was good with growing the business in terms of marketing and sales, but I was lousy in the other areas. And that cost me dearly. So that's the first thing I would say to all of you listening today is before you think about exit or increasing the value and investments, do you truly have a dream team, number one? And number two, are you focusing on what you're naturally good at? Do you love what you do? Is there a passion for what you're doing? And the things that you don't enjoy hopefully could be passed on to somebody else. So later on in my 20s, I had a chance to brush myself off and go the second time round in my entrepreneurial journey. And this time, with a few $1,000 investment, I was lucky enough, I call it luck. I think I was lucky, but attracted luck as well, and took the business to a $20 million business within about 4.5 years. And then I learned my next big lesson. Two things came out with the second journey. Number one, if you're going to go into partnership with someone, choose your partners wisely. Sometimes we go into business with friends because we get on, it's a good relationship. That's exactly what I did. And you find that when things are not going well, that's when you find someone's true character. Their true character comes through. Or if you meet someone in different environments, you then realize what their true character is. And I didn't get a chance to really test my partner's character. I didn't test it. And that was a mistake. So that was one. Two, here's the biggest mistake, and Rob will definitely beat me up for this because I don't think he knows this story. But during the fourth year in the business, I was offered at that time £13 million for the business. I think today's money, it's about $16.5 million. I was around 26 years of age at the time. And I tell you what got in the way, my ego. Because the business was growing so fast, we thought, if we could take it up to this level, I'm sure we could take it to a $100 million business. But all of our clients and everything that we were doing at the time were technology companies. And we got hit by the year 2000 crash, recession, where all our clients were technology companies. We had contractors working on projects with them. And literally in one client alone, we had 200 contractors. And I never forget the day when Capgemini, Ernst & Young, made that call and said, we'd like to give notice to all 200 contractors. A year later, I was blaming my partner was blaming me. Our partnership was not strong enough to go through that adversity and a downturn. Eventually, we split up. I ended up buying back certain assets from the company, but I can tell you right now, I didn't get £13 million for it. And the second lesson that I learned from a mentor is build your business from day one as if you're going to sell it, whether you want to sell it or not. Build it like you're going to sell it. And what does that mean? That means, number one, put the right things in place. So if someone does show up and says, hey, I want to buy your company, can I have a look at what's going on inside the company, what's happening? If you were to open up all your books, show them your numbers, show them your processes, systems, meet the team, that person should be able to go, yes, I feel strong about this acquisition or purchasing this company, everything's in place. But number two, and if someone does come along and offer you money for your business, and Rob will share how you can increase your valuations, but if someone comes along and offers you X, the next tip I've got for you is know your magic number. And I think Rob also talks about this. See, at the time, I really didn't know what my magic number was. I didn't speak to my wife. We got married quite young. We already had a couple of kids by then. We didn't know our magic number. And what I mean by that is, we all have a lifestyle that we want in life. We all have goals and aspirations, whatever that may be. So I would say get clear on what type of lifestyle that you want. What are your goals and aspirations? And next to that, there's got to be a number. For some of us, it could be $1 million. For some of us, it's $10 million. For some of us, $100 million. For some people, because they want a few big yachts, it could be and own a football club, it could be a few $billion. Everyone's got different aspirations. But if I knew my number at that time, I would have accepted the 13 million pounds. But because of my ego and not knowing my number, I failed in that deal. I've learned from it. I still kick myself today because having half of that money could have got a long way into maybe the next investment or going again with another venture. So let's go back to Dream Team for a second, and I'll start to wrap up soon. Is when it comes to Dream Team, around 19 years ago with my work in the human capital management space, and then linking it with family businesses that I work with around the world, I created a model called the DNA model. I'd gone through a process of going through every psychometric test I could get my hands on. I'm sure some of you have come across DISC and Myers-Briggs and SHL and many, many great tools out there. And what I realized was this: you could meet two people that come across very, very similar on the outside when it comes to personality. But when you ask key questions and behavioral questions and go into their past, you can discover that both of them have completely different talents. But yet on the outside, it seems like they've got a similar personality. And that's when I went on a mission to really, with my own experience of behavioral questioning, fact-finding, assessing people, I decided to create a model and test it with a few thousand people. And the end result was we ended up creating a model that could give us 90% accuracy in understanding what people's natural talents, strengths, and weaknesses are. So within that model, even though I've got a short period of time today, I'd like to share with you the main 9 profiles that are in that model. So if you're looking to increase your value and build your dream team, or you want to be in a position where I say if you fly away from your business and you're not around, will your business still grow without you? You know, if you're not around, will your business still grow without you? Because I'm sure that would be great for an investor in some cases. In other cases, an investor may want you to stick around for a couple of years because of your position within the organization, as succession may need to happen. So whether it's succession, building the dream team, whether it's a startup, these are 9 profiles I want to share with you that you should consider having in your team to achieve any one of those outcomes. So the first profile I want to share with you is what we call the innovator profile. The innovator profile, other words would be creator, pioneer, visionary. I know Rob's definitely one of these, is someone whose mind works at a very, very fast speed, constantly churning up new ideas all the time. Typically, these are people who can inspire people with new ideas very quickly. However, if they stick around with the same group of people every day, they can also confuse them because they keep changing people's minds because they're on to the next great idea. So if you are an innovator and you're listening to this today, the next person you need in your dream team is what we call a planner. Other words would be an improver, mechanic, engineer. This is someone who shows up in one or two ways. Either they're involved in the beginning with the innovator in the strategy area, process systems, or if a business is already well established, this person will be able to make improvements and make everything a lot better, systemize everything. So with these two people in the dream team, we've got a good team who could come up with the ideas, come up with strategy, come up with process systems. But we haven't made any money yet. Business is not growing. In fact, they're probably confusing the hell out of each other, these two characters. The next person that we need in our dream team is a promoter. The promoter normally has the biggest ego out of the 9. Strong character, strong ego. This is a person who should not be working in the office every day. Otherwise, they'll sabotage relationships. They're great with marketing, publicity. They need to be in the public domain, getting the brand out there, creating buzz, noise, getting people excited about what you're doing. And they're brilliant on the platform. They love the limelight. Give them an audience, off they go. The next person on our dream team is the connector. This person does things with their heart first, and their logical mind catches up sometime later. I also call them lastminute.com people. They're highly disorganized, but they're great with relationships. They're the glue internally in the company, and they're great externally when it comes to building customer, distributor, supplier relationships. We've then got the mentor. The mentor is the most patient person out of the 9 to nurture talent, grow people, develop people. They're very good one-to-one with groups of up to about 20 people on average, and they'll get the best out of people. The next person is the operator, ruthless with execution, can rub people up the wrong way, comes across a little bit hard, but they're only interested in one thing, the finish line. Are we getting things done? They don't care about the rest. They're great at delegating, and they're great at following up with people to make sure the job gets done. The next person is going to make the till ring, is the negotiator. This person doesn't care about what happened last month or what's going to happen next month. It's all about 5 o'clock today. They're highly impatient, they're fast with numbers, and they love buying and selling something and making a profit, squeezing someone, closing the deal, and they've never paid full price for anything in their life. If they're married, and they got married, they've probably even negotiated that and made a profit. Okay, that's a little side joke. We then have the banker profile who loves numbers with substance. Show them a spreadsheet, they're in heaven. They'll use 2 calculators at the same time. They know what came in, what went out, analyzing numbers, and they'll tell you exactly our position in the last 5 minutes. But if you ask them what should we do with the money for the future, they scratch their head and say, I don't know. And then finally, we get to the investor. The investor is a bit like the Warren Buffett, very, very slow, very calm, takes their time, loves research, data, protecting themselves and others, and only makes decisions based on the long-term gain. They're in it for the long term. It's a long-term play, not short-term. And they'll take their time, but they'll frustrate other people because they don't make fast decisions. So I've only shared these very, very briefly. If you want to know more, you can reach out to me or go to my YouTube channel where I've got a whole bunch of videos on this. But essentially, out of the 9, the first thing is, very quickly, innovator, planner, promoter, connector, mentor, operator, negotiator, banker, and investor. What would be the top 2 for you blended together, where you know these things are easy for you to do and you love to do? Where are the biggest 2 gaps right now in your dream team? Because if you've got those gaps, I'm sure a potential investor or someone who's looking to invest or buy you is going to find those gaps. So where's the 2 biggest gaps right now in your dream team? And if you're starting something, you don't need full 9 people. Between 2 or 3 of you, you could cover all 9. Okay, that's a nice team. But as you grow, you want to make sure all 9 are absolutely covered. And if you're looking for a succession plan, you've got to be clear. You may not need another one of you. You may need a different type of profile to take the business to the next stage. I find innovators, planners and promoters are great for startups and to get them up to $5 or $10 million. I've noticed that promoter connector operators are great at taking businesses to $100 million plus. I've looked at operator, negotiator, bankers who reach that maturity level and take it to the next stage. And then you've got the others that are very good at turnarounds, or if a company's bleeding, create a regeneration path. So you need different types of people depending on the cycle that you're in. The last thing I want to leave you with, then I think we're going to Q&A, is a little story where I was working with a client. And we were working with, some of you may know this company called Carlyle Group. Okay, they're a very, very big global company, and they decided to check out my client and their organization and flew in a whole team. I'm the board advisor, so I'm playing the facilitator role, and it was awesome. It was 2 days of interrogation. Okay, of interrogating us on absolutely everything to do with the business, and eventually, going back and forth, they had private sessions, we had private sessions, come back together in the room again. Cutting a long story short, by the 3rd day, they said, we are open, okay, minded to go to the next stage based on doing further due diligence on the company of making you an offer. And initially, as we started to tease out what it could be, they said the first criteria is we want 51% of the company. It's a family-based business. That was a deal breaker straight away. The family was saying, no, we're not doing that. Eventually, after a bit of negotiation, going back and forth, we agreed 50-50 could work, okay? And both parties would still be happy based on one criteria. This is amazing, and Rob can probably go into more depth in Q&A because of his experience. They said, we will only do 50-50 on one criteria. We have a right to change the CEO at any time we want. By the way, the CEO was a family member. So I'll pause on that. I won't tell you what happened after, it's confidential, but all I can say was a learning experience of negotiation with a big potential investor when it comes to control, but protecting their investment by having that one caveat of we can change the CEO at any time that we want. Because Rob's already mentioned it, you know, people talk about product and process versus people and positioning. For me, people and positioning is more powerful than just the product and the process. And the CEO could make or break that investment. So I'm done on that note. I hope I've left you with a few things to think about, stimulated your mind, and given you a different version based on our topic today. Hand you back to Adel, and maybe we'll go to Q&A, I believe.
Thanks, Rob and Reg, for the inspiring and thoughtful presentation and speech. I have a question, but if I will leave it first, maybe to the delegates and guests that we have, if participants. If you have anybody has any questions, maybe you can unmute and ask.
I believe there's a chat as well. There's a chat there, which people can also ask us questions. There's already a message there from corporate group.
Yeah, there is also a chat for questions, but I have a question, and this question goes to Rob. A business can be capitalized with either debt or equity, and there are advantages and disadvantages as to equity and debt financing. So respectively, maybe from your perspective and experience, which one you prefer and why?
It's a good question. Most of my 20 years of buying, selling, and investing has been equity plays. The truth is, there's usually a blended solution. So there may well be equity, there may be some debt in there. So my preference is equity because there's a number of reasons, but the primary one is not saddling the business with too much debt. One of the things that can dampen the growth and scaling of a business is lack of cash. And where I've seen that happen, often there's a lot of debt in the business, which then hampers growth. And by the time we get to see it at Evolution, that business, the owner is looking to sell because the company is saddled with debt. So I have an innate preference for equity. The other reason is that where there's debt involved, it isn't the investor that values the business, it's the bank or the private equity firm. And so you introduce another party that's a decision maker, not perhaps the people that you've met who may be part of the executive team. So, and bankers are not known for their generosity. And I think I can speak of most countries around the world. And from a seller's perspective, we're looking to raise investment funding or looking to sell part of the business. Having a bank involved in the background can be quite a tricky thing to steer around. So equity play is the one that I favor, and those are the two major reasons. I don't know, Reg, if you've got a take on it as well.
Yeah, I've got a different take on it, just mainly based on this year with the COVID-19 situation, where if I look at the whole client base across Africa, Middle East, and Asia, past clients and existing, present clients, the ones who have done well during COVID-19 are the ones who've got no debt. I can think of two families right now that have an entire culture, philosophy of no debt. And they're sitting on cash. It's giving them the ability to also acquire, buy things on the cheap. And they've had the opportunities to have the debt because they don't have that philosophy. In this cycle, they're going to come out as winners. And the ones who've suffered, even though they've had great businesses, really good companies, and suffered are the ones that were hugely leveraged. So, my thoughts are coming from a different angle. I think getting the balance right, and Rob, with your experience, you know that it's all about the ratios. You've got to know what your ratios are, and if it takes twice as long and twice as much money to achieve your goals and aspirations, can you handle the debt during that time frame? If business takes a dip, or it takes longer to achieve those numbers you've got, those wonderful uh, financial forecasts, can we handle the debt? And if the answer is no, if we took a 50% hit, 25% hit with our revenue, we can't handle that debt, then you're over leveraged. That's my opinion.
Thank you both. I've got another question coming from participants. What would be the points on which you would advise a startup or an established company differently?
So as a starter, I would pick up, for an established business, I would pick up on something that Reg said, which is building this dream team. And do you know what the hardest thing, and I found this in my life, is letting go of the thing that you've built. And Reg talked about succession planning and having that magic number in mind for the future. That's great. But the hardest bit is letting go. And I'm still working that through in one of my businesses, because it's like you give birth to a child and you nurture that child. It grows up and now it wants to leave home. You feel as a father, or perhaps as a mother, that your child doesn't want you anymore, that it's finding a new life somewhere else. So I don't underestimate, as an established business, don't underestimate the letting go. It's one in three businesses that goes to market to sell is taken off the market prematurely, and invariably it's because the seller has changed their mind. They don't want to let go. They don't want to lose the significance and purpose in life that they have by being a business owner. It isn't about the cash, whether it's $13 million or $130 million. It isn't about the money. It's about having a reason to get up on a Sunday morning or a Monday morning, depending on where you are in the world. That's how I'd advise established businesses differently, is about the letting go and building that dream team, and let your dream team get on with it. Don't interfere as the owner. With startups, my advice is don't do it. I think it's the hardest job in the world. I've done it twice and I would never do it again. Start a business from scratch. Instead, I'd buy a business that was distressed or under some pressure, and get alongside the current owner. I'd buy their equity out 100% for not a great deal of money up front, but we would share in the upside of the business going forward. So I think for startups, it's really hard, particularly now, because startups, to do it right, you often need a war chest and you need investment capital. But very few investors are going to invest in a startup pre-revenue business. So you're in a catch-22. So if you are considering starting a business from scratch, my advice is don't do it on day one. Do it as a bit of a side job. So if you're in employment, or you've got another income source that's stable, keep that going, but work on this new initiative in the background. See if you can create something. See if you can sell it. See if you can generate some cash and a revenue stream, and then make perhaps that leap into starting up a business. So very different perspectives. I hope that helps one or two people.
Yeah, and I'd add to a few points from a different perspective. Again, I think that's probably why you got Rob and I on the panel today. I love startups. Love starting things from scratch. I've got 4 children. I've helped 2 of my children build startups. I've helped my sister build a startup. My wife is just about to launch a new business during this pandemic. So I'm passionate about startups, and my advice for startups versus established is, Rob mentioned it earlier, which is solve a problem. Find out what the problem is out there. Find a solution to it. You don't need to be disruptive. You don't need to be the first in the marketplace. You don't need to be the most innovative company in the world to build a great business and have someone wanting to buy it in the future. So for me, it's about taking something that already exists out there. How can you improve it? How can you do it faster, better, create more convenience for the customer? I think a good person, as a benchmark, is Sir Richard Branson in the UK with 400 plus companies. Yes, he's got 10% of them are highly innovative, but the rest of his companies in the portfolio are existing industries, things that are already out there. And he just looked at it from a different perspective and thought, you know what, I could make that better. I can make an improvement. I could provide better customer service. I could get the product to the customer faster. I could make it look nicer, feel nicer. So there's many look better. So there's many different ways you could do this. But I would say, for a startup, bootstrap the business. Rob mentioned it in a different way, which is work full time and do a side hustle. Okay, hustle on the side to build something. I believe, yeah, if you're employed, that's the way to go. But if you're a true entrepreneur and you're happy to take the risk, got a bit of savings behind you, and okay for 6 months, I would say bootstrap the business. Don't overspend. You don't need glorified offices. Hire lots of people. Just make sure you get one thing right. Only one thing. Develop a product or service where somebody pays you for it. I think Rob said the same thing in his first slide presentation, which is if no one's going to buy it, then your formula doesn't work. Okay. But if someone buys a product once, you could replicate it. And if another 5 people buy it, you know what? You've got something here. Now it's time to maybe invest a little bit more in other areas. For established businesses, completely different. We use something called a state methodology that we created years ago for established clients. Very briefly, it's a double acronym for state. So S is for structure and strategy. Established business, we've got to get heavily into those areas. The 2 T's around talent and transformation. The 2 A's, alignment and accountability. Then we get into thinking areas and further team areas. And then finally, we get to the areas of execution and excellence. So for me, an established business has a lot more elements that could go wrong. And what I find is with established businesses, they slow down with their decision-making ability. There's a lot more politics to deal with, a lot more issues at board level, leadership level. And when you're a startup, if you're the owner, hey, you could make your decision on the same day and you're good to go. So these would be some other things I would say that are slightly different.
Thanks, Reg. We've got 3 questions and 10 minutes left, so if we can handle it. So one is question to you, Reg. It says, what is the key element investor is going to look when we present our business? Taking into consideration this business exists in Dubai, they've got a high profile of customers. It's a startup, but it's been doing loss for the past 3 years. So what is your advice?
I think probably Rob answering this one. My first thoughts, immediate thoughts, just listening to that would be, okay, so it's been making losses for 3 years, fine. We're talking about getting an investor, okay, fine. I'm not sure the loss for 3 years is going to be attractive, but what I would be looking for if I was doing a deep dive in this business is what are the hidden assets? Recently I had a case study of a company went through a similar thing. They were loss making, but their biggest asset was the database of 35,000 customers. And somebody who was looking at acquiring or creating a strategic partnership or a joint venture partnership wasn't interested in the 3 years loss. They were interested in the 35,000 customer base and how they could leverage that for a different product or a service. So I would say, as a deep dive, where are the hidden assets in that business? And how could we leverage off those and monetize those if you are looking to attract investment? Rob, what are your thoughts? You may have a different view.
Yeah, I love businesses that don't make a profit when I'm an investor, because it means I'm going to get a discount. I'm not paying a premium for a business like that. So it's important if you've got a loss-making business and you're looking for investment. Reg is definitely right. What are the hidden assets? But also you need to understand when you're in front of investors, why can't you make a profit in the last 3 years? You need to know that. You may not be able to solve it, but you need to identify what the issue or the issues are. But it's a really good question. I'm sure going forward, there'll be more and more businesses that are struggling to make a profit. So it's a question of understanding what's going on. And maybe it's the investor that could be that catalyst to help with the turnaround. But you're not going to get a premium value for your business.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. You actually answered my next question, part of my next question, which you said, as investors is always looking for distressed acquisitions, okay, rather than ongoing concerns. So this one, the question is, how much does the current crisis, I mean, we are expecting it could be lengthy, okay, that has impact on valuations. Will buyers make an adjustment to remove some of those current direct impacts in certain period, for example, if we take into consideration the previous years, the numbers were good.
Yeah, I've just got one quick comment, and then I'll pass it over to Reg. We've got 5 COVID deals on the go at the moment, including in the UAE, and prices haven't changed this year. What has changed is the deal structure. So the price being paid by the buyer hasn't changed, but when that money is paid to the seller has, because there needs to be some sharing of the risk. So deal structures have changed where a part of the agreed price is deferred. And I think that's right, because the seller's saying, well, it will bounce back post-COVID. Well, okay, you're going to need to risk some money on that. I can't just take your word for it. So we found deal structures have changed, but the deals are still going ahead. We're achieving a multiple of 9.25 during COVID. So that's over 9 years profit, adjusted profits for businesses that we're selling. So there's no change of price, but there is in deal structure, and deals are taking longer as well through the lawyers. Reg, have you got a view on it?
Not really. I think this is your domain. I haven't been involved in areas to do with that. The only thing that has come up for me is really timing, because if I look at businesses of where they were 2 months ago and take examples of businesses in the last 4 weeks in UAE as an example, I've got case study after case study where we've seen 25 to 32% increase in sales. So if you were doing a deal in March, April, and you don't know what's going to happen in the future, and you did the deal, my only advice right now, if you're still in a position where things are fairly low, have not picked up for you, linked to what Rob is saying, is if you're looking to do a deal with someone, try factor in a period of certain milestones to be achieved in the next 6-9 months. And maybe there's some sort of formula there you could work out, which is win-win, rather than going by what's happened in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
I could add maybe a comment from my side, and my experience is that such investors would be still looking in your books and understanding what is your sales pipeline and what kind of sales pipeline you have in terms of confirmation from a client, whether it's a letter of intent or maybe an MOU or an agreement. It could be deferred, but nevertheless, these kind of things gives more commitment for the investor. And then the people who's running the business, if they are very well experienced and they've got the capabilities and everything, and that's what the investor is looking for people to remain at the business, that they can grow it. I think that could be. And then the third thing is that maybe for such business never thought other markets. So today, as I said, we're having challenges, but challenges opens opportunity. So if there are potential opportunities in the neighboring markets or anywhere else to export it, why not? That could raise, but it has to show and has to prove.
Yeah, I just to round that off, great businesses always sell. if they're in the right hands. So if you're in the wrong hands at the moment, either you're raising investment and it's not working, or you're trying to sell and it's not working out, then come and have a chat with us, because great businesses, I've sold businesses in boom times and I've sold businesses in recessions. So great businesses always sell.
I think there was a question as well, wasn't there, that came up, sorry, in the chat, which we missed. Rob, I think you're in the right business.
Go ahead.
Rob's in the right business.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so there's one more question. Says that wants to start a business. Okay, that could be anything like a service company, a retail outlet, and he has heard about the nine dream team people. Yeah. But in this scenario, what would be the top 3 people that to have them to make this successful?
Well, I'm biased because I've been in sales for 40 years. And so I would say that you don't have a business if you don't have a great salesperson. And so you need the business start on a startup. It starts with selling and then cash coming into the business. Then you can afford to spend money on marketing. So I come from a very biased background, which is you need some people out there that can create something from nothing. And I'm not sure which of the 9 archetypes that Reg described that would fit, but certainly someone who can generate sales. And I think the question is that you don't, Reg did mention that you don't need all 9 from the start and paying them a salary. I guess if you can find one person that's got all 9, or 2 or 3 people who've got all 9, then that's perfect. And maybe you don't pay them a salary. Maybe you do some sort of JV and you share in the profits.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, Rob, I think, well, based on our tens of thousands of profiles, everyone can have different weightage on the 9. However, the maximum would be 3 natural strengths, which is really what we should focus on. You'd have 2 or 3 which are acquired skills. If you hang out with the right people and practice, you're going to develop those skills. And then there'll be 2 or 3 which, you may have the knowledge, you can do them in small doses for a short period of time, a few days or a few weeks, maybe a few months maximum. But then eventually you'll hate it, it'll be frustrating for you. So I would say, to answer Rob's question there, definitely innovator, promoter, connector, negotiator, those 4. You've got the idea generation, you've got someone who can break doors down, get the brand out there, create the right buzz. You've got relationships being built with the connector and negotiators closing something, so the till starts to ring. Then you've got the money to reinvest in all the other areas. If you don't have any of those profiles yourself, and you can't afford to have anybody else, you've got to work smart. You've got to be resourceful. So maybe you're looking for interns. You could find remote workers to have them on a part-time basis. And that, by the way, is a trend that's growing right now, is having remote workers on a part-time basis in your team and access to resources like that. You may decide, and there's plenty of books in my library with unicorn companies that have been built because 4 people came together and decided to share equity in a company, shook hands and say, let's go. So if you can't do it on your own, maybe you do need to attract somebody else. So there's many different ways that you could structure this, but don't think, oh, can't afford it, can't get those people, there's no way I could build my startup, let's leave it, forget it. No, there's always a way.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and thanks for the participants making their time today for this webinar, and we look forward to have more webinars. We will announce through our channels, and we will reach each of you about our next webinars for the coming month. We have a series of webinars in the month of August and September and onwards. And don't forget that we will send you the feedback, and we're looking forward for your feedback on these. We'll send you our survey on the feedback. So we look forward for the feedback to improve our webinars. So thank you once again, and everyone have a good day and evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gents.